Recently on my feed, I've been seeing a lot of buzz about Edifier. This has been everything from marketing content to sponsored content, and even comments of people saying that they've been seeing so much content from Edifier that they're curious if they're actually any good or if it's kind of all just a bunch of marketing hype. And I just so happen to be an audio nerd that owns a pair of the R1280s, so I figured I would go ahead and make a review today. Hey everyone, I am Ian from Tone Hi-Fi, and full disclosure, I have actually owned these speakers for several years, or rather my then girlfriend and now wife has owned them for that long. She was using her TV speakers to listen to music and watch movies, so I got these for her to hopefully be an improvement over the TV speakers without having to spend an arm and a leg. Now before we dive into the review, I want to make one thing really clear, and that is that I am biased. I design and sell my own speakers at tonehifi.com. They're all hand-built in America. But that technically means that a company like Edifier is in competition with me. But I also want to make it clear that these do not compete with any products that I currently sell or ever plan to sell, because the price point is just way lower. In order to mitigate some of the biases that I can't help but have, I'm going to be using some objective measurements in addition to subjective listening tests for this video. These are the R1280DB. There are a bunch of different models out there, like the R1280T and the R1280DBS. As far as I can tell, these are exactly the same speakers, but the amplifier on the back is different. The R1280DB does have Bluetooth, but they don't say which Bluetooth it is, and if you want to get Bluetooth 5, then that's only on the DBS. With that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about build quality. Build quality wise, these are about what I would expect for this price. They are pretty light. I would guess that they're using 1/2" MDF wood here. In terms of the enclosure design, they are not quiet, and you don't want to hear that, especially the inconsistency. See, it's a lot higher pitched up here, and it's a lot lower pitched. We kind of knock around the side. That's probably going to end up introducing some resonance, so the cabinet itself is going to be producing sound or kind of reflecting sound rather than just the drivers. Coming around front, they have a 4-inch woofer or mid-bass. I believe this is a 1-inch tweeter. There's some kind of phase plug design on here, which should theoretically help with off-axis. But they are unfortunately surface mounted, so you can see that they stick up. They don't actually mount flush with the cabinet of the speaker. That is likely to introduce some diffraction. The woofer doesn't look like it's going to output a lot of bass at high volumes. The surround does not have like a ton of movement or anything. Feels kind of stiff. And then they are front ported. There is this what looks to be probably about a 1-inch port. The port is technically flared. It's a very, very minor flare that's probably not doing a whole lot. What happens is that as you're getting the volumes higher and higher and there's more and more bass, there's more air flowing out of here, and the port kind of stops working. So that means when you really crank the volume up, the bass actually kind of tapers off, and you may even have some weird kind of huffing, chuffing kind of sounds that come along with that. So that's some general thoughts on the design and appearance of these. Now I want to go ahead and switch gears and talk about some objective measurements. I'm going to keep things really broad and basic today. If you don't know anything about speaker measurements, that's totally fine. I'm just using this as a way to get some objective data and be able to talk about how these actually perform. The way that we do that is that we put a speaker in a room, we put a calibrated special microphone a certain distance away from it, and then we do a number of different measurements running a sweep at different angles of the speaker. Now, if you do follow along with measurements, know that I have filtered these to remove room reflections, and this is also being smoothed at 1/24th decibel per octave. First thing that we're going to be looking at here is the on-axis measurement. So this is going to simulate what the speaker would sound like if the speaker is looking straight at you like this. We're not looking at any of the other reflections, what it looks like on the side or anything like that. I did this test with no grill on and none of the EQ controls, the bass and treble knobs adjusted at all. What we want this line to look like is to be as straight, flat, and smooth as possible. And we can see that there is some wonkiness. It looks like there's a really simple crossover being used here. I would guess that in particular, the tweeter is using like maybe a single capacitor first order crossover. Have this really big dip around 2 kilohertz, big dip here, and then there's kind of a smaller dip around 2.7 kilohertz here. That goes down about 10 decibels from kind of the center point of the speakers. What does all that mean? Well, in practice, it means that vocals, instruments, anything that's playing in this region is going to sound a lot more recessed, less detail, kind of further away. In particular, I think you're going to have a lot less detail on things like vocals, guitars, like any instruments that are living in that region. If we kind of continue following this graph here, we see that there's kind of a steady elevation that kind of ends up around 6 decibels, 5 or 6 decibels, up at 5.3 kilohertz. For me, I really don't like when speakers have this elevation. This can be really like sharp and sibilant and those kind of like bitey treble sounds. I always hate when I hear that. Sort of between 5.5 to 7.37 kilohertz or so. There's a notable dip where things kind of drop off a little bit less detail there compared to the surrounding area. And then we have another big jump up here at 8.3 kilohertz. These two are really far away from each other, so those are going to be dramatically louder and quieter, respectively. I did another measurement with the grill on, and you can see it actually seems to help a little bit. I'll show you both of them together. So you can see the grill actually seems to deepen this peak here a little bit, but that's already so severe that I wouldn't worry about it too much. And you can see it actually helps flatten out this big peak here around like 8 kilohertz. Does flatten out a pretty good amount. So I would say these are going to sound better with the grill on. And then I was also curious to see with the EQ, I turned the treble down a little bit because the treble is pretty spicy. And comparing that, I'll just show you the original measurement with the grill on and with treble -4. And it's actually a much better performance. You can see it's a lot more smoothed out. This top end in particular actually cleaned up really nicely. Still some big peaks, still not a rock star speaker. We still have this big dip down here, but leave the grills on and reduce that treble knob by about -4 decibels. Or so, and that will help a fair bit. I'm now going to show you a little bit of the horizontal measurements. We were just looking at on axis like this, and then we're going to look at measurements where we're slowly turning the speaker to the sides and seeing what that performance looks like. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because these graphs can be a little bit difficult to look at and parse information from if you're not familiar. A few quick things that I'll call out is that this big dip here at 2 kilohertz is going to be present regardless what angle you're looking at these from. You're just gonna have to live with that. Moving up a little bit higher, kind of pretty okay looking separation here. We do run into some kind of wonkiness up here around 5.5 to about 8.2 kilohertz. Probably gonna have some weird imaging, just not very precise. Not gonna have that great kind of 3D sound that you might hope for with hi-fi speakers. Not terrible up here at the top, but kind of this region is a little concerning, and then this region. Now, of course, I did also set these up and listen to them, used a few different test tracks. One of the things I noticed when I was actually just listening to these and not doing measurements was that there is a really narrow sweet spot with these. So I noticed when I was standing up and I was, say 3-4 feet higher than the speaker, there was a really notable drop off. I would definitely want these to be kind of pointed straight at you for the best listening experience. And then they do kind of lose a lot of detail as soon as you're not quite in line. That lack of detail around the 2 to 3 kilohertz range. Does not provide a lot of clarity, especially for vocals. And then there were also some things like cymbals and higher notes on a guitar, things like that did sound a little bit kind of stabby or sibilant. With all that said, I do want to kind of bring this back around and remind you that these cost maybe $200, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on the model. And I do think for that price point, they're actually doing a pretty solid job. You can absolutely walk into a Best Buy and spend more than $200 on a speaker that is going to sound worse than this. These do actually produce decent bass. They'll go down to about 75 hertz, so it's not gonna shake your room around or anything, but there's enough clarity and kind of punchiness in that range that I think that they're going to be satisfying for a lot of people. You're just not going to be listening to these at loud volumes. I'd say a small room like an office, smaller areas, maybe a dorm room, things like that, they'll be fine. But I wouldn't recommend these for hooking these up to a TV or using them in like a family room or even a kitchen. They're just not really going to have the kind of power that you'd want there. It's really nice that these are a powered speaker as well, so you just plug them into the wall, you connect a wire to connect both speakers together, and you're kind of off to the races. And they do have a lot of inputs, so if you want to use these with, you know, Bluetooth or hooking up to a turntable and stuff like that, it's a pretty great way to get started. Normally here, I would go plug my website and tell you to go look at the stuff that I make over there. I do feel a little bit weird about doing that in a video like this, where I'm talking about a competitor's product, so I will just say that there's some links in the description. No affiliate links for anything. Don't care where you buy these. I won't get any kickback. With all that said, if you like content like this, hit that subscribe button. I'd appreciate you leaving a like, and I'll see you soon.